everybody. Well, it's the best attended race of the year, and they've been queuing up for over 5 hours. The traffic backed up to Barcelona, we hear. Almost 400,000 people have come through the door here at Circuit de Catalunya over the last 4 days, and the organisation is right on the limit of coping. But are the multitude going to get what they've come for? An Alonso victory. Well, he did it last year in a Renault car which frankly was slower than the Ferrari all weekend. But this year things are a lot more even for Alonso. If you look at the lap times in qualifying and then allow for a little bit of extra fuel in Raikkonen and Hamilton's cars, it certainly looks to me as though all 4 of the top runners may have set virtually identical lap times. And we'll know more about that when they make their first stops. But those of you who followed Grand Prix racing a while know that back in '97 at the European Grand Prix in Jerez, 3 cars set identical lap times, and I reckon within a few hundredths of a second we've seen a similar thing here today. But of course in different times where the cars carry fuel in qualifying that they will start the race with. We will see though, but if anything, Lewis Hamilton has been slightly faster than Alonso all weekend, while the Ferraris seem to have got stronger as the weekend has gone on. And the big question is, what's their race pace going to be like here this afternoon? For me, any one of the front 4 could win it today, and the start will be absolutely decisive. If Raikkonen or Hamilton, who's on the inside line running down to the first corner, can move up a place or 2, given the strategy that they're running, that could give them the platform for a victory. It could also end up in tears. We've got a big gravel trap on the outside of that first corner, and with 4 very eager men, all either leading the World Championship or very close to it, you can imagine their hunger to come out of that first corner in front. There is the grid then. Another wonderful effort from Robert Kubica up in 5th place, ahead of teammate Heidfeld. Kovalainen out-qualifies teammate Fisichella for the 2nd time in 4 races, and that bad impression it created in Australia certainly fading all the time. Coulthard well up as well. And for the 3rd race in a row, Ferrari McLaren at the front. Moving through the second half of the grid, Nico Rosberg, Rubens Barrichello, who's again in front of teammate Jenson Button, who told Martin that he was looking forward to this race, and certainly it's going to be a very intense one. Anthony Davidson there in 15th place. Ralf Schumacher has had a very quiet weekend. His teammate Jarno Trulli is 6th in the same car, and he's down in 17th. Mark Webber there 19th after hydraulics problem during qualifying, and the 2 Spikers and the Toro Rosso at the back. Scott Speed had an engine cutout during qualifying and didn't even set a competitive time. Well, every race that's been held here in dry conditions since we first came here back in 1991 has been won by a driver starting from the front row of the grid. So Martin, really it's up for Raikkonen and Hamilton to buck that trend here this afternoon. How do you see the game unfolding? One of the critical things is going to be whether a car can follow another one in traffic, isn't it? Because how much time do they lose if they spread out 4 of them? How much time is the 4th car in that train going to be losing to the leader?
It could be 6 to 8 seconds quite early on in the Grand Prix. Certainly Ferrari and McLaren agree with you, James, in that in fact we all think that those 4 cars are very similar in absolute pace terms. So I think it'll be frantic down to turn 1 in terms of who gets off the line. Then that second phase of the start process where they really get up and running, and then of course choosing a braking point down into that turn 1 with less than optimal tyre temperatures and pressures, and it is going to be frantic because the race can be won and lost down in that first corner for those top 4. Then they'll settle in, and it'll then be about who has to blink first, who stops first, which we think could well be Fernando Alonso in 2nd on the grid. And the Ferrari looks a little bit slow down of Raikkonen, a bit slow getting it down on the ground, all on newish, if not brand new, soft tyres then for the start, which gives them about 8 to 10 metres extra off the grid. Well, that's pretty much the length of a car, so it's critical to have brand new tyres if you've still got an allocation available.
Shows you how important it is to everybody to have that little bit of extra grip. It's those tiny details that often make the difference, particularly when you've got 4 cars so evenly matched as we have in the 2 Ferraris and the 2 McLarens. Massa slow off the line, but he has not stalled the car. He has got away now. A rather eager marshal waving the yellow flag, but no major drama there for Felipe Massa. And we'll talk, I'm sure, as the race goes on about the influence of Michael Schumacher. Even though he retired at the end of last season, he has come here this weekend and and he is very close to Jean Todt and his son Nicolas, who manages Felipe Massa. Kimi Räikkönen, I spoke to him Friday. I said, are you going to listen to what Schumacher has to say? And he said, no, I work with my engineers and do my own thing. But clearly Felipe Massa is soaking up every single piece of information he can get out of Schumacher, whose brief here is to be a consultant for the whole team. But I just wonder whether that's been the little bit of lead in the pencil for Massa that's given him the courage to go out there so far this weekend. We will see. We will see.
Curious though, we haven't seen Michael wandering around the paddock really, just brief moments of him. Doesn't seem to want to talk to anybody and discuss or have a good old chin wag over a beer. He's inside the technical truck and he's hidden away really, hasn't he, through the weekend?
Yeah, I'm told he's been leaving the circuit around 6:30 in the evening, and one evening actually left the track later than Kimi Räikkönen. If that's true, that's pretty amusing. Anyway, out on the track, it is 47 degrees, the track temperature. A tiny bit cooler than it was yesterday in qualifying, for those of you who were with us there, but the air temperature is a little bit warmer, 29 degrees, so I'm sure that track temperature will come up a fair bit. And Nico Rosberg telling you that when he went out on his Saita lap, he felt that he was able to push it a little bit on certain of the corners. He felt that the grip had changed quite a bit.
Yeah, we've had two pretty heavily populated grids and long races, and as we said yesterday in qualifying, it does change the chemistry of the racetrack. The rubber that gets put down is different to that of a Formula One car, and it'll take them half a dozen laps or so to sort of recondition the track. And it is often shocking when you get your first 2 or 3 laps underway of a Grand Prix and you really set your car up beautifully, and you think, what on earth have I got underneath me? How did I end up with this when I've done so much careful work? But then it begins to settle down.
Well, it's a sport that is about control, and speed is nothing without control in this game. So it's about 66 laps, 4 very evenly matched cars at the front, all the drivers pushing hard. No one can afford to make any mistakes. We're going to have a 2-stop race here this afternoon, expecting the front runners or most people to come in around about anything around late 18, 20, 22, that kind of range. And it's going to be a tactical battle for the teams and a very intense driving battle for the front 4.
Massa didn't seem to notice that they'd put the green light on for the formation lap. I think that's why he was slow away. And well, as you said, it's very hot out there. They're going to sit on the grid now for the thick end of 3/4 of a minute, I would imagine, those that are on the front row of the grid. And the cars are boiling hot.
The joint is jumping here in Barcelona. Ron Dennis, his wife Lisa and their family, and we've got yellow flags waving. It's Jarno Trulli, who appears to have stalled from 6th place on the grid. So now you can see those red lights. They're actually yellow in real life, but it sees yet red on the telly, indicating that the drivers should go round again and reform on the grid. And Jarno Trulli will have to go to the back. Well, in fact, he'll be pushed off the grid and start from the pit lane, but effectively he'll be starting from the back.
It's the only system you can have, really, if you run into the back of a stalled car. We did lose a Grand Prix driver like that back in 1982, I think it was, but it's a critical time if a car's stationary. You're doing 100 miles an hour in 3 or 4 seconds, so from leaving the grid, so you can have the most enormous accident. That car will have to start from the pit lane if they got it going and from the back of the grid. But now all of the cars that are doing this another slow formation lap, they are getting very critical on temperatures, and they've been bashing the clutch and the transmission and the drive shafts, warming their tyres up to go to that grid that turned out to be a non-event, and they've got to do it all over again. And I can tell you, these things, we drove, Mark and I drove the Williams 2 weeks ago with low tyre pressures and temperatures at certain stages, and it's like being on ice. It's absolutely amazing how difficult it is. So the drivers have got a lot of work to do now, and they will certainly have to tiptoe down into turn 1.
Yep, they'll have to recalibrate their brains as well. Obviously the heartbeat would have been rising as they expected to start. Now they have to just calm down, take stock, make sure everything's in order. Do another 2.9-mile lap. We're riding on board with Robert Kubica, who's going to be starting 5th place here today. Let's hear from Ted with news on Jarno Trulli.
Yeah, it's a fuel pressure problem. The car's fuel pressure just dropped completely low, so they've had to start him up, and he just has to keep the revs incredibly high. So he's going to be sitting at the end of the pit line now. He is starting and just revving the thing like crazy to keep it alive.
Jarno, we have a problem on the fuel pressure. You have to keep the revs high. If the car starts, we have to keep the revs high.
Ted word on the case there. Jarno Trulli has got the engine started, we're being told, so he will start this Grand Prix. What a shame for him. It was another rabbit out of a hat from Trulli yesterday. Toyota not particularly fast during the practice sessions, and Trulli, as always, on Saturday afternoon, pulling out a stonker of a lap.
So what's happened now? The tyres leave the blankets at about 100 degrees centigrade, but by now they'll be around 60 to 70, I would guesstimate, and therefore the pressure's gone down, the ride height of the car dropped. A lot of the suspension settings of the car are fundamentally within the tyre, the movement and deflection of the tyre, so the whole car just changes the way that it functions as soon as the tyre pressures are below where they need to be.
Dr. Mario Tyson, the team principal of BMW Sauber team, and he'll be very pleased with the progress that they have made over this last season. It's a big hole there where Jarno Trulli's car used to be. And here we go then, the Spanish Grand Prix in front of 140,000 fans. It's about to get underway, and a good start from Massa. Look at Alonso down the inside. Hamilton looks like he's got away well, and so is Kubica. Now it's side by side, Hamilton and Raikkonen. So does Raikkonen, and now Kubica's attacking Alonso, who was very, very bold there, but he has lost out. Good battle there going on. Kovalainen looks like he's attacking David Coulthard for two Renaults together. Massa leads. Hamilton is up into second place. That's great news for Lewis Hamilton with the fuel load that he is carrying. Raikkonen's third, Alonso down to fourth, fifth is Kubica, sixth Heidfeld, seventh Coulthard, and eighth Heikki Kovalainen.
Well, David Coulthard managed to pass the Renault he was so desperate to be in front of by turn one, and he's up to P7. Alonso should have given up on that move much earlier. It wasn't going to happen, and he tried to stay with it. He's got somebody's off at the back of the field there. That looks like a Renault, doesn't it? So the Renault of Fisichella trying to defend his position. He's now wildly out of sync in terms of the speed, but he's got back up the... and more contact at the back of the field there.
Yeah, it could well have been Jenson Button involved in that, because he was just behind Fisichella and Barrichello. Alex Wurz would appear to have broken the left front suspension on his car, or maybe something at the back. But anyway, Felipe Massa leading. Hamilton is chasing him. He's a second and a half behind him. Raikkonen is third. Alonso, that move has really cost him. It could have cost him victory on his home Grand Prix here today. He's got a lot of work to do now. Kubica is fifth. Sixth is Heidfeld. Seventh is Coulthard. Eighth, Kovalainen. Rosberg ninth. Here's a battle coming down the straight between Davidson and Sutil. They're battling.
Got the amount of fuel on that we think he has, but Massa moved slightly on the grid, I thought, but got it slowed, stopped before the lights went out, so I don't think he'll get penalised. Ralf Schumacher clearly caught up there, I would imagine, with the Alex Wurz. What happened was Fisichella, Wurz got back to the pits, Fisichella really dropped it in turn 9 and was defending himself so aggressively, but he was out of sync in terms of speed, having come back on the track, and it backed the pack up and they started tripping up. And look at this is Alonso getting ready to go down the outside of yet another Ferrari, and once again it doesn't work. We think he's quite a bit lighter than Raikkonen at the moment. Plenty of dust and rubbish coming out of the back of the Ferrari as it grinds along the ground in the early stage of the race with new skid blocks and a reasonable amount of fuel on board. Alonso knew he needed to get on with that, and
I think it's all about balancing risk when you're going for a world championship, and now he has to think about how big a risk he's prepared to take to get past the Ferrari of Kimi Raikkonen, because at the moment Massa is pulling away at the front. He's now 2 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton, who's pushing as hard as he can with the little bit of extra fuel that he's carrying. He's half a second slower on that lap than Felipe Massa. Raikkonen is now 3.5 seconds behind the race leader. And just to clear up the incident, it clearly was Ralf Schumacher and Wurz involved in that impact. Here's another look at Alonso trying down the outside of turn 10. That's a braking zone where they go from 180 miles an hour down to just 50 in 140 meters, and Alonso fancying it as a place to try and get past Raikkonen, but it didn't come off this time.
Quite a bit of debris on the track from Wurz's incident, and I wonder if we're going to see any punctures coming from that. It appear to be bigger pieces and slightly off the racing line. So Barrichello in the other Honda P10, they're definitely having a stronger weekend at Honda, much to their relief, I'd imagine. And this is a strange racetrack. If your car's not working anywhere, it'll really pick the car up and drive it. Either it'll stick or it won't.
Well, Robert Kubica is travelling pretty quickly as well. He's actually lapping faster The last lap he was going faster than Alonso and Raikkonen in front of him. He's staying with them anyway. And we saw, of course, the BMW of Nick Heidfeld passing Fernando Alonso in Bahrain. So BMW right on the tail now of this leading four. David Coulthard in 7th place, 18th place, of course, Trulli, there he is on the left, starting from the pit lane.
Okay, there's Massa getting away well then, and at that time Alonso was down. He's got a side pod full of gravel, and here we go from onboard Alonso's car. And it's so clear that Massa's got the corner, and it's no good coming. He's so lucky he didn't go upside down there. It's no good. The laws of physics say, oh, he's been a very lucky boy in 2 corners, has Fernando Alonso. The laws of physics said that he was never going to make it through there.
There's Wirtz hitting the back of Ralf Schumacher. Jenson Button already gone through. So it was Wirtz hitting the back of Ralf Schumacher. Here it is from Wirtz's perspective.
He's completely unsighted. It's not Wirtz's fault. There's nothing he could do about that, because that's an acceleration zone. You don't expect all the cars in front of you to be slowing down there. So Alex, completely unsighted, looking through 2 rear wings, and he would never know that the cars were slowing.
Difficult start to his Formula One comeback for Alex Wirtz. He's yet to put in a really strong qualifying performance, and well, of course he was hit in the first Grand Prix by David Coulthard very spectacularly. Coulthard going straight over the top of his cockpit, missing his head by about an inch with the rear wheel of his Red Bull, and here today he's involved in another collision. So we think Massa's carrying a bit less fuel than Lewis Hamilton, so Hamilton will be told by his team what kind of lap times they think he needs to be setting to have a chance of winning this Grand Prix. He's going to run probably 2 or 3 laps, maybe more, further than Felipe Massa. We will see. And with 60 of the 65 still to go, Massa, Hamilton, Raikkonen, Alonso, the top 4. Then it's Kubica, who's still in touch with Alonso, Heidfeld, Coulthard and Kovalainen rounding out the points-paying positions. On board with the Renault of Giancarlo Fisichella, riding in 12th place, chasing Jenson Button, who will be very pleased to be in front of a Renault at this stage of the Grand Prix season, given the way his car's been performing. That last lap, they set virtually identical lap times, and the cars in front, Rubens Barrichello and Nico Rosberg, more or less on the same sort of pace as well. So the race pace for Honda not looking too bad at the moment.
That's a fact. Fisichella having a nightmare really for Renault, made that error in this very corner we're going through now, ran wide there, and that's what put him back down the field. But as you say, James, he's not really lapping in such a way that he's all over the back of Jenson Button. Button has locked his front wheels 2 or 3 times now though on this lap alone, which tends to obviously make the tyres degrade ever faster. Massa comfortably fastest again, half a second quicker than Hamilton and Raikkonen. Alonso 2/10ths down on that. So although Alonso is very much keeping the BMWs at bay, it's well, if he is lighter, if we're right, it's looking very bad for Fernando Alonso right now.
Certainly is, riding on board with a recovering Jarno Trulli in 18th place. Started from the pit lane. Let's listen to team radio.
Engine problem. We know, Jarno, we know. It's a fuel pressure problem. Try to keep going.
Tough weekend for Jarno Trulli after a great qualifying session. Very frustrating for him. Got his last podium in Formula One here 2 years ago. I think after the strong season with Toyota in 2005, thought he would have a great couple of years that followed. It's not worked out that way. And there is the great Roberto Carlos, one of the world's great left backs from Real Madrid, who never misses a chance to come to Barcelona for the Grand Prix.
We have high failure.
We need to stop the car. We need to stop the car, please.
Mark Webber retiring from this Grand Prix, had a hydraulics problem yesterday in qualifying, a drive shaft problem in the morning in free practice, and now he's got another problem. He's coming into the pit lane. This is lap 8 of the Spanish Grand Prix from Barcelona. Felipe Massa is leading this one. He was on pole position, and on the run down to the first corner, he and Alonso collided. Alonso went to the gravel trap on the outside and lost places to Lewis Hamilton and Kimi Raikkonen. Hamilton then up from 4th on the grid to 2nd at the moment. He is 5 seconds behind Felipe Massa, who's trying to shake him off, because we believe that Hamilton is carrying a bit more fuel than Massa. Hamilton certainly has a chance of winning this Grand Prix. The start worked out exactly the way he would have wanted it to. Raikkonen is 3rd, Alonso is 4th, with his strategy not looking too clever at the moment. That big gamble he took into turn 1. Kubica is 5th, Heidfeld is 6th, Coulthard is 7th from 9th place on the grid, and Heikki Kovalainen in the Renault is in 8th place. We've already lost Ralf Schumacher and Alex Wurz from a collision on the opening lap, and Louise Goodman has just found Alex Wurz.
Well, Alex, you were complaining about traffic in qualifying yesterday, people getting in your way with even more dire consequences today.
Yeah, Louis, seems us two, we don't have very good interviews this weekend. Yeah, in that case, I had a good start, so I took a few guys. Was lined up behind Ralf, because it's all very close racing. And I think he had to leave to avoid the guy in front of him, and for me that happened too quick. I had zero chance to react, and I ended up on his wheel, so it's a short end to my race.
Thanks, Alex.
Yep, it's pretty much how we saw it. Jarno Trulli pits for Toyota, obviously out of sync. We know he's carrying a fuel pump problem. Ralf Schumacher has returned to the race. He's currently 20th, so 2 retirements so far of Webber and Alex Wurz make that 3, as Jarno Trulli, who didn't get off the line in the first start. So both Toyotas then have had problems. Ralf Schumacher running 19th now, having had a long pit stop.
Well, it's cat and mouse at the front as Trulli retires from this race. Oh, what's going on there? Ferrari going slowly. Kimi Raikkonen is going slowly, touring round, the field pouring past him. Got some kind of technical problem there. He's in the final part of the lap, so he will dive into the pit lane. We don't tend to get a great deal of team radio from Ferrari, so I'm not sure what we're going to find out, but that car looks like it might not even make it as far as the garage.
Sort of broken piece on his steering arm, but it sounds more like the engine spluttering, doesn't it, is the reason why he's in the pit lane. It's downhill, he might just coast to the final part of it, and Ferrari are right at the beginning of the pit lane, so he's got half a chance, but that might just help Fernando Alonso out. But Alonso's not fast enough at the moment. He's 4 seconds behind Hamilton and running quite slowly, and they're getting dropped completely by Massa, who's on lap 10. Let's just see what's going on here. This is Raikkonen struggling. Yeah, when we saw the right front from his camera, it looked to me like a piece of the suspension was broken and moving around, a piece of the steering, I should say. So it might just be that. Ted is down in the pits.
Yeah, it looks like something mechanical as well, though, Martin, because he conked out right halfway down the pit lane, then he got going again. The team were completely surprised. They were sat in the garage, saw him slowing down, didn't know he was coming into the pits, and now, yeah, it's terminal. It's completely done. I can't see anything wrong with the steering arm, but we'll wait to find out. But whatever it is, God, how's that going to affect Kimi Raikkonen's championship? He's out of the race.
Well, he's one of the 3 drivers leading the World Championship at the moment, along with a big piece of bodywork sitting right there on the pit lane exit. It's all going off here. One of the Toro Rossos, I believe, has stopped down there. Is that the car of Scott Speed? Is that a blowout? It is the car of Scott Speed. Left rear tyre failure. That will get everybody's attention.
Well, it could be. There's a lot of debris out there. There's even more debris now, though, James, but that could well be a slow puncture from the vast amounts of carbon fibre from the various incidents that we've had.
Just watch it go. There it goes. Kaboom. Into the garage goes Raikkonen. Remember that Ferrari and McLaren both on their second race with the engines. And I don't know if that's a failure for them, but they did have to turn them down a bit, the engines in Malaysia, if you remember the second race there. So we'll find out. Meanwhile, we've lost Mark Webber, Red Bull Racing, and perhaps Louise can find out why.
Mark, more reliability problems.
Yes, unfortunately, that's cost us a race finish there today. Obviously very early on as well, so I think the problem started quite early, and similar to qualifying, playing up with the diff, and then I think the hydraulics are struggling, and the guys have to retire the car.
You had a hydraulics problem yesterday.
Situation, obviously, yes, disappointing, but there's not much more you can say. We've just got to be a bit more clever and try and work out our problems.
Thanks, Mark.
Well, Kimi Räikkönen certainly, if not disgruntled, looking a lot less than gruntled, and he didn't move to Ferrari for reliability problems. He had enough of them at McLaren, but so far McLaren have been pretty bulletproof, dare I say it, this season, and he has got a major problem. We'll find out why as soon as we can. Meanwhile, Felipe Massa is 6.5 seconds now clear of Lewis Hamilton at the front. Alonso third, and that's given him a better chance. He's the fastest man of anybody in the first second. Heidfeld is fifth. Coulthard is in sixth place.
Yep, so far then we've lost Scott Speed with that blowout. Kimi Räikkönen, we think, with some kind of engine malady. Truly, fuel pump. Webber with his technical problems that he just told us about. And Alex Wurz tripping over Ralf Schumacher on lap 1 of the Grand Prix. So let's see what's going on at the front. It's lap 12. For the first time, really, this Grand Prix so far, the McLarens have matched Felipe Massa. He's 6.5 seconds in the lead. And also, for the first time, too, Alonso is a tenth quicker than Hamilton. Alonso beginning to get into his stride, but he's 10.5 seconds off the lead.
Race Coulthard, come on.
Heikki Kovalainen being given the push. He's 1.8 seconds behind David Coulthard, who is driving another blinder. Coulthard really flying for Red Bull. Let's hope he can have some reliability this afternoon. Massa sets a new fastest lap, 1 minute 22.7. Looking up the road, Hamilton and Alonso, 23.3, 0.6 of a second. Massa's responded to them starting to match his times. He is looking very Schumacher-esque out there, isn't he?
He certainly is. He's got his head together. He's got his car working. And at the moment, Lewis Hamilton is not doing enough to put himself in with a chance of winning this Grand Prix. He needs to be closer to Massa. If he's got a few extra laps, he's going to have to push like mad on those extra laps as well. He won't be having the chances around the first round of pit stops. It's the work he can do at this stage to get himself a chance around the second round of pit stops, somewhere around that 45 to 48. That's where the lead of this race will ultimately be decided. And we're riding on board with Alonso, recovering after that very ambitious attempt to get around the outside of Massa into the first corner. Alonso is the fastest man at the moment on the racetrack as Scott Speed tells his sorry tale to the Toro Rosso engineers. A massive tyre failure for Scott Speed, taking him out, and this is lap 14.
Plus 3 seconds.
That is the Red Bull Racing team telling David Coulthard that he needs a 3-second advantage over Heikki Kovalainen in order to maintain the place after the pit stops. They've obviously worked out how much fuel Kovalainen is carrying, how much fuel they know they're carrying, and that's their assessment. Coulthard is currently 2 seconds in front of Kovalainen, so he needs to find a bit more.
He's hanging onto the back of the BMWs there, isn't he? One of them has just dipped a wheel in the gravel by the looks of it, which often happens on that turn 8. First and second sectors, he's responded to that radio message of you need to get on with it, because they obviously expect Coulthard's pitting a little bit earlier, as you say. Another new fastest lap from Felipe Massa then, 122.6. The McLarens cannot respond, and Fernando Alonso has got some kind of problem in the final part of the lap. He's the quickest man through most of the lap and loses horribly in those final few turns.
Yeah, we're going towards the first round of pit stops. We're riding on board with the race leader. Sole remaining Ferrari in the race. Robert Kubica. approaching the first round of pit stops in the Spanish Grand Prix from Barcelona. 140,000 people crammed into this place. They've come to see Alonso win the race. At the moment, it's not looking particularly good for him. He made a very bold move on Felipe Massa into turn 1 to Lewis Hamilton, his teammate. Alonso, though, is back up into third place because Kimi Raikkonen for Ferrari has Felipe Massa has the race well and truly under his control at the moment. McLaren seem unable to respond to the speed of the Ferrari at the front. Massa 8.5 seconds clear.
Can improve corner 2, 7 and 9. Can improve 2, 7 and 9. Apex, try to close it.
And specifically which corners he's slower than his teammate. They've got the data, of course, back on the pit wall, at the back of the garage, and often back at the factory as well. The same data, and I've never heard that kind of readout of very specific details of where he just had a scrappy lap, 2 laps back, lost half a second of his advantage to Fernando Alonso. They're lapping within 0.006 of a second of each other, the two McLarens last time around. Massa's lead on lap 17 up to 9 seconds now, and McLaren can't seem to respond. We'll have to wait and see. Of course, at some point they've all got to run the other specification of tyre as well, which could turn it on his head. But right now it seems that Hamilton and Alonso do not have an answer to Massa. Ferrari will be nervous though. Kimi Raikkonen's gone out with electrical problems. Will it happen to the other Ferrari? What is it? Normally these things can easily happen in pairs if you get a batch problem. It's not often you see a Ferrari coasting into the pits, is it?
Well, as things stand, if it stayed like this, Massa first, Hamilton second, Alonso in third place. Lewis Hamilton would be leading the World Championship, leaving Barcelona and heading towards Monte Carlo in 2 weeks' time, a track on which he has never lost a race. He won there in Formula 3 and in GP2 last year, and he has a tremendous feel for the Monaco circuit. Anyway, a long, long way to go here. 48 laps. We're riding on board with David Coulthard, who's now in 6th place, thanks to the demise of Kimi Raikkonen. And this is the most competitive showing from David Coulthard since the last competitive one a few weeks ago in Bahrain. It's all coming good, I think, for Red Bull now. Coulthard lapping the same sort of pace, only 0.2 of a second slower than the BMW of Nick Heidfeld in front of him, and only 3 or 4 of a second slower than the pace set by Felipe Massa. So Red Bull look like they've made a fairly big step forward.
Yes, they had a good test last week, tried some new pieces. Coulthard left that test actually the fastest man, and he's managed to translate that so far into a solid run in the Grand Prix as well. Renault engined, of course. He's got Kovalainen in the works. Renault chasing him for all he's worth. Pretty much matching David on times. Good fight going on there that we haven't heard about. And I think if I was given too many of those pep talks, I'd just throw it clean off the road. There's another left front lock-up by Jensen with a couple of blisters on the inside there now. We've seen a lot of that as the unloaded left tyre, as the car just gets a little bit of roll in the chassis heading into a corner, unloads the inside tyre, and it's so easy to snatch it and lock it. Also means you don't tend to have quite enough front downforce either when that happens.
Well, the intelligence in the paddock was that Felipe Massa would stop around about lap 20. This is lap 19 now. There is no sign of any Ferrari mechanics. They're wandering around. They're sort of hopping from foot to foot, so it's not too far away, I don't think. But at the moment, no sign of them pouring out onto the track to bring Massa in. There's Luca Baldessari, the small man on the right with the glasses. He's taken over from Ross Brawn in charge in terms of race strategy, and he's giving the mechanics a briefing. Aldo Costa there, just to the right in the white shirt. He's the chief designer of the Ferrari. A lot of men who filling very, very big shoes indeed, with Ross Brawn on sabbatical, Rory Byrne retiring, and into the pit lane comes the Honda of Rubens Barrichello. 14 new aerodynamic pieces on that car, and there are the Ferrari mechanics for Felipe Massa. He is going to stop on lap 20, and that will mean that Lewis Hamilton will lead this Grand Prix, but his disadvantage to Massa is 9.5 seconds, and that's really in Massa's favour at this stage of the Grand Prix.
Yep, down to the speed line then. He is... There's There's a garage full of, there's a lot of space in this pit lane here at Barcelona. You've got plenty of time to straighten the car up before you go into your garage. You've got to stop on the marks, otherwise the gunmen can't get the wheel on the nut. That refueling rig, oh, we've got a big fire going on there. There's a lot of spilt fuel. That should burn itself out. He might get away with that, but the fuel rig leaked. But did they get the right amount of fuel in? They had a real difficulty getting that fuel rig off the Ferrari. Major problem there for Felipe Massa. I don't think it should actually affect the car, that fire. Just a flash fire of fuel on the surface of the bodywork.
So the race leader Felipe Massa pitted, had a fire on the way out. Fernando Alonso from third place also made a stop. He's gone back out on track. He's gone out to the harder tyre at this stage of the Grand Prix. Remember that in the current rules they all have to use both types of tyre, and that's where the fuel ignited on the exhaust.
Well, all of the suspension is protected against the heat of the exhaust, but not to that extent. And there was the fuel that just burned. It wasn't an enormous amount of it, but soon got rid of it. I wonder if any wiring or anything like that could have got damaged, but it seemed to be on the surface.
So Liuzzi going slowly, and looks like he's going to become another retirement. Lewis Hamilton leading the Grand Prix, and Ted Kravitz is down in the Ferrari garage.
I was watching that happen. Two things. First of all, they did get all the fuel they wanted in the car. Second thing, that nobody was hurt in that. And also, actually, the fire had burnt himself out. I was looking, it was blazing, and it came past the McLaren garage, but it had burnt itself out by the time it had got about 3/4 lengths down the end of the pit lane. So Massa on his way, and no one uninjured down there.
Thank you, Ted. Bad time to be making a pit stop with a slowly touring Tonio Liuzzi coming down the pit lane. Coulthard went round the outside of him. Hopefully hasn't lost too much time. Great competitive showing here from David Coulthard, as high as 5th place before he dived into the pits. Of course, Alonso will take that place back off him, having made his stop. There is Coulthard putting another set of soft tyres. That white band denotes the softer type of tyre.
Yeah, so it's blind around that wall. So I wonder the DC didn't run into the back of the Toro Rosso. Presumably they would have been showing the white flag. And here we're on board with Coulthard, and he did just get a view of the back. That cost him a couple of seconds. Normally you can steam through there to the line. Liuzzi doing anything he could, and that's staying pretty much to the right-hand side. So Coulthard not losing too much time there, really. And why would they need to put that down? The fuel should just evaporate, surely. So what is that to soak up? Normally you put that stuff down for oil, not petrol.
There's the second Toro Rosso retirement of the race. So we've lost Liuzzi and speed, Raikkonen to an electrical problem, Trulli a fuel pressure problem, Webber and Alex Wurz as well, who was involved in a collision with Ralf Schumacher earlier on. Ralf Schumacher is still out there, lapping reasonably quickly in the 1:24, so the car obviously not too badly damaged. Into the pits then comes second place Robert Kubica. Another new set of soft tyres going on.
He did well to save 2 sets of tyres for the race, didn't he? Curious that Alonso's chosen to go on the hard tyres in this phase. Presumably he's going to do a short middle stint of the race and come in for a longer one at the end on the soft tyres. Who knows? Renault in then, and that is Fisichella. Button's pitted too for Honda.
Well, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because clearly what they're going to have that Ferrari don't have is an idea of how the hard tyre's performing this afternoon. Because they're out there on the harder tyre. Lewis Hamilton will get the benefit of that information, because Alonso will be telling him how it's going. If it looks like the harder tyre is performing well, and certainly everybody suggested that the gap between the softer tyre and the harder tyre in performance terms is pretty minimal here, as the two Hondas get very close together around the exit of the pit stops. Barrichello on the right, Button on the left, and they duking it out over 12th and 13th places.
Front wing's gone on one of those. Yeah, wing's gone on Button's car, so they did touch, and oh dear.
Race leader Lewis Hamilton pits on lap 23. He went 3 laps longer than Felipe Massa on the fuel, exactly what was expected. He's going for the softer tyre at this stage. Seems to have lost the glass in his wing mirror on the left-hand side there, if you can see. So hopefully no one will try and pass him around the outside into turn 1, because he won't have a clue what's happening.
That's a horrible feeling, though, when you can't see in your mirror. Peripheral vision, you're sitting so low. And this is Button after his pit stop, neck and neck with the Barrichello. Button hits the curb, slides, and tags Rubens. And all a little bit silly, really.
Whose fault's that?
Jensen's. He lost the car. Rubens gave him space, but he lost the car on the curb.
Yeah, So no suggestion that Barrichello was at fault there. Jenson Button catching the curve, sliding wide and tagging Rubens Barrichello, making life a little difficult for the spiker coming through, but he's going to have to dive into the pits. There he goes. So Jenson Button, who was 14th, will drop to the back of the field behind Ralf Schumacher. Michael Schumacher there, watching proceedings, and his role here to be a consultant to Ferrari. They're not ruling out him making a few other appearances the rest of this season, but he's not going to be doing much talking this year, that's for sure. He doesn't really want to deal with the media, he just wants to deal with the team.
Yeah, he must feel like a fish out of water, really. I'm sure he wants to be back in the car. I'll be amazed if Michael Schumacher doesn't come back and drive a Formula 1 car at some point. But Button's struggling to get away. Those two metal strips they run over as they come into the pits is to earth the car out. The chassis is made of carbon fibre, and that's, if you see them running over two copper strips, it's there to earth the car for the refueling.
That's quite a big line to lob in over a pit stop. What do you think? Michael Schumacher will definitely race again in Formula 1?
It wouldn't surprise me at all. Why not? Lauda came back, so did... I can't see him standing there watching a race with a set of headphones on. In fact, I'm not even really sure what he's doing here.
Well, we featured Nick Heidfeld in the show, and we picked the right one. He's currently leading this Grand Prix by virtue of the fact that he had lead behind Kubica, but it's going to be tight between the two of them for 4th and 5th places, and that will promote Felipe Massa back to the race lead. Lewis Hamilton is 8 seconds behind Massa, so in the course of the pit stops, he's gained almost 2 seconds on Massa, and he's pegging him at the moment on pace. We'll get our first lap time as Heidfeld dives in. We'll get our first idea of what sort of pace Hamilton is on in this middle stint of the race. But he's gained back a little bit of time anyway on Massa. Here comes the BMW.
Coulthard managed, despite that getting blocked in the pit lane, stayed ahead of Kovalainen in the Renault. He's 8th at the moment, but he's waiting for Sato ahead of him to pit, and Rosberg as well. Oh, the wheel gun still on, and the wheel nuts come off as well. So that's a disaster there. But the BMW wasn't ready to go. Toyota team picked the wheel nut up for them, and he can't go anywhere. You cannot. There's no wheel nut on it, son. Unless that's the wheel nut that came. Sometimes they have a spare one, but I don't think so. That front wheel's going to fall off.
No, don't go out.
Not sure he should be heading out there. Is anybody looking for this?
You might need this fella.
They do have spare wheel nuts around, but I've got a feeling that was the important one. But no, it was the important one.
The right front, I think. Looks like it.
Yeah.
On board with the Renault. And that's, I believe, the Honda in front. That's Fisichella and Barrichello battling over 11th place. Riding on board with Fisichella. And he's had a reasonable run of points finishes so far this season, but this weekend, although managed to get themselves into the top 10 in qualifying, the race hasn't been quite so good for them. But BMW getting ready again.
I can't believe they let that car at the end of the pit lane.
Oh, poor fella.
I mean, he wasn't sitting there with his hands up in the air, and I'm surprised the driver didn't see that, really. Because it's your right front wheel, man. He's busy, unless he changed his mind and went back onto the spindle again.
Nice first touch by the Toyota mechanic, though, with the wheel nut. He's probably a star in their football team, I think. That was very good control. Barrichello under pressure from Fisichella. In the battle now over 9th place. Well, the computer's telling us it's over 11th place, but we'll see. Heidfeld, of course, has dropped out, so that will make a difference. We may have lost another car as well. Sato has dropped down. He was up in 9th place. He will drop down behind them. So this is the battle for 9th place between Barrichello and Fisichella. At the front, Hamilton has lost 0.8 of a second to Felipe Massa in the last couple of laps. Alonso seems a little bit out of it at the moment. He's 10.5 seconds behind teammate Hamilton, and being frankly a bit upstaged on home soil, Fernando Alonso. Is that the mirror coming out? Yeah, there it goes. That was before Hamilton's pit stop.
He does like the back end waving around, doesn't he? So Heidfeld managed to get it back to the pits. You're not allowed to reverse up the pit lane. He'd been disqualified immediately. But the team could have and should have pulled him back. So away he goes properly this time. and I'm quite impressed he got that round actually without losing the wheel. Ted has some news.
Yeah, well, that was incredible. And just to let you know, all you BMW fans, there wasn't any damage to the car. Had a look at the front wheel. The wing was all fine. But it's Urs Peralta, who's the chief mechanic, who let Nick Heidfeld earlier away on that one.
Bit of a lock-up there from Rubens Barrichello, feeling the pressure from the Renault of Fisichella, but he'll be delighted to be in this position at all. Rubens Barrichello in the top 10 with race pace matching the Renault, and that is quite a turnaround for the Honda team. I mentioned earlier on, they got 14 new aerodynamic parts on that car. They are running, developing a B specification car, almost a completely new car, which we will see, I believe, now starting to creep in at Honda. They've solved their braking stability problem. The car was very difficult to control under heavy braking. That's no longer a problem for the drivers. It's just a bit slow, and they are pushing very, very hard back at Brackley and at Tochigi in Japan to claw back what they've lost over the winter. There is a look at the winners and losers off the grid. Coulthard up 4 and on for his best result for a while.
I think that's grid probably to race to date, really. DC up from 9th to 5th. And he's really got Kovalainen all over the back of him now. The Renault is faster at this stage of the Grand Prix. And the Works Renault car, obviously Coulthard with the Renault engine in the Red Bull as well. Very, very good fight going on there. They're half a minute behind Massa, the leader, who's now 10.7 seconds ahead of second place man Hamilton as well. Alonso, we know, on the harder tyres, can't match Hamilton at all at the moment. And in fact, is only 1.8 seconds ahead of Kubica in the BMW. So Alonso will be having his mirrors full of the BMW shortly.
Well, he was passed by a BMW in the last Grand Prix in Bahrain, and he has painful memories of that. And he's vulnerable to BMW here again in the form of Kubica this time. 1.8 seconds only the advantage. We don't know what fuel loads they all took on in the first round of pit stops. The only one we do know is Felipe Massa, who took on 7 seconds worth of fuel. That's good enough to take him about 19 or 20 laps in. So he'll be pitting again around about lap 40. 13 laps from now. And but as for Hamilton, Alonso and Kubica, I'm afraid we don't know at the moment.
Yeah, the teams use spotters with a stopwatch and binoculars, so the teams know exactly how long the rig is, exactly how much fuel put in. It leaves us a nice surprise later on, so we're all wondering exactly how the strategy is going to play out. But you do wonder if they shouldn't just publish that information for us, so we know what the story is. Hamilton by 11.1 seconds. Kovalainen having to lift there in the turbulent air of the Red Bull. A corner he would normally be full throttle. Car moving around all over the place. All of those bits and pieces you can see hanging off the side and the front of it. Very heavily compromised in the hot and turbulent air coming from the back of David Coulthard's Red Bull or any other Formula One car. But Kovalainen really beginning to put the kind of performances and maturity into his Grand Prix driving that we were expecting of him. That's plenty wide enough. They're coming up to and last. BMW taking a bit too much inside curve down there at turn 7. Probably busy watching the spiker rather than where he should have been going himself. Kovalainen then close enough to the back of Coulthard to be thinking about a toe and a move up the inside, but so much debris there. You'd be a brave man to start running over that. That's certainly restricting any ability to overtake down into 1. They'll have cleared a bit of a path through the pit lane exit. Kovalainen very, very wide on the way into turn 3.
Rubens Barrichello letting them through. Anthony Davidson is the fastest man through the speed trap, 311 kilometres an hour. That's on the main straight and the run down to turn 1. So the Honda certainly kicking out plenty of horsepower, and David Coulthard feeling the attentions now of the Works Renault of Heikki Kovalainen. Remind you that Red Bull Racing, which David Coulthard is driving for, a customer of Renault for engines, so it's the same motor powering both of these cars. Kovalainen making a very early second stop. This is the Spanish Grand Prix from Barcelona, lap 31. He was tucked up behind David Coulthard, and he's trying something a bit different here this afternoon. It's been an eventful race so far. Felipe Massa is leading it from Lewis Hamilton by 13 seconds, and at the moment you'd have to say that Massa appears to have this race under control. Hamilton certainly has his teammate Fernando Alonso under control. The reigning world champion is 11 seconds behind Lewis in third place, with Robert Kubica fourth, David Coulthard in fifth place, having a great show here for the Red Bull Racing team. Alonso lost ground at the start. He made an ambitious pass on Massa off the start line into turn one, ran wide onto the gravel and was passed by both Hamilton and Raikkonen. Dropped down to fourth, but then we lost Kimi Raikkonen to an electrical failure on lap 9. At the first round of pit stops, Massa pitted on lap 17, and we think he can go another 20 laps into this race. Alonso lap 19, Hamilton lap 20, and Kubica lap 21. So how that all shakes out at the second round of stops, we'll find out around about lap 45 to 50. And we've also seen Jenson Button knocking his front wing off on his teammate Rubens Barrichello's car. And that's about where we are at the moment, with Felipe Massa, I think, feeling quite comfortable at the front.
Circuit is clear behind you. Keep pushing. Strategy is good. Keep pushing, Takuma. Keep pushing. Stay with Renault. Stay with Renault.
They must half fancy a World Championship point this afternoon at Super Aguri. It's unusually a large number of cars dropped out so far, and Louise has found Jana Trulli.
Jana, doubly disappointed because you had such a stunning qualifying session. A missed opportunity. Thanks, Jana.
Yeah. This is the battle for the final World Championship point here this afternoon as things stand. Rubens Barrichello looking to give Honda their first point of the season. Fisichella trying to pick something up from what's not been a particularly great race. I'm sure is not pleasing him at all, but it shows you just how tight things are in the midfield in Formula One now. You've got a very close battle at the front between Ferrari, McLaren and BMW seem to be joining into that as well. Kubica only 2.5 seconds behind Fernando Alonso at the moment.
I know your pace has dropped, but the whole grid has dropped. The leaders are doing 24.2, so the track is slower, don't worry.
Just a bit of reassurance there for Rubens Barrichello from Jock Clear's engineer. Honda have improved, although the car looks a bit of a handful when we see it from the viewpoint of the Renault onboard cameras. But of course Fisichella's out of position really, having dropped the car off the track very early on in the Grand Prix up at the unsighted turn 9, and that put him on his back foot. But his teammate Kovalainen is 7th at the moment. He has stopped twice, and he's on a pace that is going to get him in front of David Coulthard. So Coulthard, I don't think, has got the pace to respond to the 122.9 that Kovalainen's doing in what is now the lead Renault. So I think there's going to be a place change there when Coulthard stops.
Well, it looks as though the McLaren is proving a bit of a handful at this stage of the Grand Prix, because both Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso's lap times are pretty erratic at the moment, and Hamilton's now dropped to 15 seconds behind race leader Felipe Massa. He seems to be the only one of the cars at the front that's able to maintain the kind of pace he was showing before. We heard Rubens Barrichello's engineer there, Jock Clear, telling us that, or telling his driver that the track is slower for everybody, but it doesn't seem to be much slower for Felipe Massa. Meanwhile, the McLarens, as I say, Lewis Hamilton up half a second one lap, down half a second the next, and clearly struggling a little bit. The wind has got up a bit, 2 and a bit meters per second, a crosswind, but clearly quite tricky conditions out there at the moment.
Yeah, Massa then, that fire clearly not affecting anything important, just scorched the bodywork a little bit with the surface fuel. It would have been, if it had been ignited by the exhaust, which exits on the top of the engine cover. Massa crosses the line with another mid 1 minute 23, comfortably faster than anybody else around other than Kovalainen, who's recently stopped for fresh tyres. And Massa's got a problem with his headrest or something on the right hand side. Something is bothering him down the stream. Best part of a second per lap slower. Kubica fourth, and he's got Coulthard chasing and catching him. David Coulthard beginning to catch fourth place BMW man Roberto Kubica. Albers is doing a drive-through penalty for ignoring the blue flags. There he is now. You're 3 seconds a lap up to pace. You're driving your heart out because you don't jump out of the way quite fast enough for the guys with the cars that are fast. You get a penalty. Bit of a double whammy, that one.
A shake of the head there from technical director Mike Gascoigne up on the pit wall. Well, what an interesting picture we have here. David Coulthard is definitely the man to watch. He's faster than Alonso, he's faster than Kubica, and he's only 6 seconds behind Alonso here. Okay, Alonso's on the harder tyre at the moment. We'll see what kind of pace he's got on the soft in the final stint, but this is looking very good indeed for the self. And unless he can get more out of it than Fernando Alonso, it might bring Alonso a bit closer to him by the end of the Grand Prix. Still 27 laps of this race to go. We're riding on board with second place man Lewis Hamilton. And I'll remind you that if things stay as they are, with Massa leading, Hamilton second and Alonso third, Lewis Hamilton will be leading the World Championship after 4 rounds as we head to Monte Carlo.
Yes, and one of the current co-leaders of the championship going into this race has already left the circuit then. Kimi Raikkonen left the traffic out of here is going to be horrendous tonight. The only sensible thing to do is get out. Normally there's a series of technical briefings after the race. David Robertson there, the manager of Kimi Raikkonen, along with his son Steve Robertson, and they're out of here. No points today.
Well, where's the Maserati? Normally Ferrari drivers have a Maserati. That looked like a Fiat vehicle of some description. Interesting. Excellent.
That's it, Nico. Keep pushing like that. You're going to go out in front of him on new tyres. You're going to have to push hard on your new tyres. One front wing do you need for that. Think about your front wing for new tyres.
Yeah, well, they're looking. They want to make a setup change. Maybe not. Depends what infinitely. And you can adjust the tyre pressures in each pit stop. But Rosberg driving nicely. P6 at the moment.
He's probably talking about Kovalainen, who's already made a second stop and is 20. No, he's not. He's not talking about him. It's difficult to know who he's talking about. We'll find out anyway. Nico Rosberg having another strong run here. David Coulthard, certainly a contender for driver of the day in the Red Bull in 5th place. Just 3 seconds still behind Robert Kubica and only 5 seconds behind Fernando Alonso. Coulthard lapping faster than the McLaren and faster than the BMW at the moment.
Yeah, they could be talking about Kovalainen, and in fact they were probably right earlier on, because Kovalainen will have to stop again, surely, as you say, James, and that's going to put him right in there with Rosberg. Coulthard now just 3 seconds behind Kubica, who's just 2.5 seconds behind Alonso. Those three will be in a line soon, although I suspect the second stops will interrupt that.
The Renault didn't need that. Fisichella pits. And Honda are ready for Rubens Barrichello. Straight fight between the two on the racetrack and off it.
Good stop there by the Renault team, and that'll be critical if they've got half a chance of getting past that Honda for the final World Championship point. Kovalainen remains the fastest man on the racetrack, even including the leaders, and is flying about to hit some traffic though. Is Heikki Kovalainen. If he can just carry on this sort of pace, he really is going to haul himself into some sensible World Championship points.
Here's your race leader, Felipe Massa, currently lying in 4th place in the World Championship. 5 points behind Lewis Hamilton. He'll take 2 out of that, but Hamilton will lead the championship, as I said before, by a little margin. The Ferrari working well around here. They're bidding for their third Grand Prix victory out of 4 races so far this season. It's been very close, but they seem to be able to keep their noses just in front. If it weren't for bad luck for Massa in that first Grand Prix, particularly on Australia, where he had to start from the back of the grid, I'm sure the kind of form he's shown us so far, he would be leading the World Championship. Barrichello pits, important for him. Remember, he's battling Fisichella, and here's your race leader. Felipe Massa in, Lewis Hamilton leads again. Well, let's hope we don't get another barbecue. Very careful with the fuse and fuel hose. Creeping forward slightly, but safely away. Neat and tidy, very well drilled team Ferrari.
Yeah, still a little bit tight, didn't on the fuel hose, but no leakage this time as Hamilton moves into the lead of the Grand Prix for the second time this afternoon in the pit stop phase, and it looks so tight down there, didn't it? And will Massa clear this traffic? No, he doesn't.
Fisichella, though, on Barrichello, looked like he dived round the outside of him. It was a very tight one between Fisichella and Barrichello for that final World Championship point. Hopefully we'll see a picture in a minute, tells us which one of them came out in front. Coulthard pits from 5th place. There he is.
Tweak of front wing, the hard tyres go on, just enough fuel to get it to the end of the Grand Prix. It'll be on vapours. You don't want to carry half a kilo more than you have to, it'll slow you down. And he's got a nice piece of clear track in front of him as well, working out well.
Yeah, he feeds back into the system, and there is Fisichella.
Giancarlo, we need to stop again. We need to stop again. You are going to have to push like anything, mate.
So Fisichella's miserable afternoon continues.
We're hearing from Ted Kravitz in the pits that the Ferrari team had a bit of a route around in the electronics box of Massa's car at that pit stop, and clearly Massa also was worried by something in the cockpit. It looks something was flapping around on the right-hand side, so a big distraction for him there. Lewis Hamilton, though, running longer in the middle stint, and therefore deferring the painful moment at which he's going to have to put on the hard tyres. This is bringing him closer to Massa all the time. The longer Hamilton can stay out there, the more chance he's got of beating Massa this afternoon. We don't know how their relative fuel loads are, but clearly Alonso being out on the harder tyre may have given them enough intelligence to keep Lewis, put a lot of fuel in Lewis's car as Rosberg pits, and that means that Lewis will be taking the pain for as little time as possible on the harder tyre. May still have a chance.
We have some traffic. We did see him feed into some traffic, didn't we? Because at the moment Hamilton is quite a bit quicker out there just before his second stop.
Yeah, we think Lewis has got a few more laps of fuel in the car. These are critical laps then for Lewis Hamilton. Remember the gap. It was 9 seconds. As Pat Simmons walks back out again. This isn't the kind of pace. The team who won this race last year with Fernando Alonso, and not quite on the pace this year.
To wait and see, but it looks like he will still be quite a bit behind Coulthard. Ted has news on Fisichella.
Yeah, news on Renault, and it's bad news. Unfortunately, they've got a malfunctioning fuel rig. So those 3 stops for Kovalainen were not as planned. Both drivers all day, Martin.
Strange, isn't it, that we've had a lot of fuel rig problems here. 9 seconds over Massa, but it's got to make another stop. He's 15 seconds clear. Got to stop again. Coulthard establishes himself nicely back in 5th position, having got all of his stops out of the way. He is looking very good.
Massa's pushing very hard, though. That time he only gave away 0.4 of a second to Lewis Hamilton. I think Lewis's chances of winning this race have receded. It was 18 seconds behind Massa before Massa made his second and final pit stop here this afternoon. But as Michael Schumacher tries very hard not to be run over by his younger brother, didn't even give him a wave, did he, on the way through?
I don't think they're the best of friends, actually. Certainly weren't towards the end of Michael's driving days. But straight into the pits. That's both Toyotas out there, and Truly stopped earlier on with a fuel pressure problem. Ralph was actually travelling quite quickly. I was watching his lap times, although he was right at the back of the field, was going rather nicely. Davidson 11th at the moment for Superguri, but he has got to make another stop, so that's going to be something like a net 13th or 14th when he's finished.
For the second round of pit stops, it's not going to be enough, I don't think, for him to do it. It's a big ask. He's going to need Massa to hit some big traffic or make a mistake, I think. It's a strange incident in the pits where he left the pits without a wheel nut being tightened. Had to do a very slow lap, and he is down in 12th place now.
Lap 47 it is. Hamilton's lead up to 11.5, but of course that's nothing like enough for the pit stop at the moment, but he's taking it 1.3 last time around he took off Felipe Massa, so I wonder how well Massa's coping with those harder tyres on the Ferrari. I wonder if we're going to get a bit of a turnaround here.
Well, it's turning around a bit, but it's not going to turn around enough because there are the harder tyres ready for Lewis Hamilton, so I'm afraid he's going to surrender the lead to Felipe Massa, and we'll see what he can do from there in the final. We've still got 18 laps of the race to go though, and Massa is in traffic at the moment, losing more time. In comes race leader Lewis Hamilton, and that looks like a very slow BMW.
Of Heidfeld, who's pretty much out of the reckoning anyway. Arms are up in the air, fuel's in, it's ready to go. Hamilton will feed comfortably back into second place, a net second place. Alonso moves ahead of him at the moment, but has to stop again, and actually is quite a long way behind Felipe Massa. And Kubica in the pits, he's got a chance of spoiling. Is that another problem on the right front? No, they're waiting for the fuel, but he's got a chance of spoiling Fernando Alonso's day, has Kubica.
Well, Alonso spoiled his own day with a bold move around the outside into turn one that sent him off the racetrack and really spoiled his strategy earlier on. He's been recovering ever since, and we will see as Heidfeld comes in to retire. This is lap 48, and still a long way to go here. Into the pits comes Fernando Alonso from second place. Massa leading the race. Hamilton is third, but he's got to watch out for Robert Kubica. Smooth stop by McLaren, and what has Kubica been able to do? He only pitted a lap earlier than Alonso. Should be safe. A tear off is ripped off the visor of the local hero, scratch of the nose, and back out onto the racetrack. Very nonchalant by the reigning world champion. There is Kubica, and he's done enough to keep himself in front. So he's heading for a podium, Fernando Alonso, after that messy start, and there is a very disappointed Nick Heidfeld.
Flying and no one reacting. I thought it was only the spare one. That was the problem. And then I called for a pushback, but no one moved. So it was clear the bloody thing was on. Because I was waiting and waiting.
They're talking about the wheel nut that didn't go on. And not surprisingly, Heidfeld. I mean, you drive as hard as you can, and then something like that happens.
Yeah,
you've got to back the team, though, haven't you?
Yeah, you win together, you lose together, but Formula 1's hard enough without silly errors like that. But you know, in the heat of the moment, those wheel nuts, they've got a certain amount of captivation into the gun, the wheel gun, but one escaped. In fact, I don't think it ever made it onto the wheel, did it? So Massa is finally then getting back into sensible lap time. I think he's had a lot of traffic. There was an impression that he was struggling for pace, although Hamilton is definitely faster than him. And a bit of traffic coming up. Is it going to get out of the way? No.
$16 laps to go in the Spanish Grand Prix at Barcelona. It's been an extraordinary weekend from a crowd point of view. The best attended Grand Prix of the season last year. It certainly looks like breaking all records this year. Almost 400,000 people have been through the door over the course of the 4 days. They hope to see Fernando Alonso win the World Championship. They've certainly seen Michael Schumacher making his return to the Formula One paddock as a consultant to Ferrari. Hello, Michael. and he's kept a pretty low profile as far as everybody except Ferrari is concerned, but he certainly helped Felipe Massa, not least with his head, and prepared him for this race. And Kimi Raikkonen didn't really want to know what Michael Schumacher had to say, but Massa's soaking it up, and it certainly seems to have helped him here. He's led from pole position. He was challenged earlier on by Fernando Alonso into turn 1, but Alonso came off worst and lost 2 places. Lewis Hamilton has driven wonderfully today. He took 9 seconds out of Felipe Massa in that period around the run-up to the second pit stops, and he's now settled 11 seconds behind him on the racetrack. They are both on the harder of the 2 Michelin compound tyres through to the finish. And Alonso's third, Kubica is fourth, having come out behind him in the pit stops. Let's get some news from Louise Goodman.
Ralph, double retirement for Toyota. We've already heard from Jarno. What was your problem?
Well, I had a problem on the front suspension. We are not sure yet what it was, and so I can't tell you. I mean, the race in general was quite good. At least the pace was there. Okay, I was a bit unlucky with the starting crash that I had, or that Alex crashed into me, but that's the way it is sometimes.
All of the teams do so much testing at this track. Why do you think we're seeing so many retirements here today?
I don't know. I mean, we haven't seen a lot so far this year. I'm just surprised. I mean, a lot of new parts have been added to the cars, and that's maybe why.
Thanks, Ralph.
Yeah, she's absolutely right. 14 cars still running of the 22 who took the original start. One of the very high-profile cars that's already out is Kimi Raikkonen's Ferrari. He's already left the circuit. He had an electrical problem on lap 9 of this Grand Prix when he was lying in 3rd place, and he is losing his share of the championship lead. If things stay as they are at the moment, Lewis Hamilton is ahead of teammates
on the soft tyres. Really odd that he had such a long stint on the slower tyres, isn't it, that Hamilton is now on to take it to the end of the Grand Prix, as is Felipe Massa. It's lap 52. There's 11 seconds to turn the car into the corner. The weight transfers across the suspension as the car rolls. You can barely see it. I mean, a Formula 1 car, but if you're in a double-decker bus, that rolls going around a corner, doesn't it, if you're in the top of it? It's just a minute version of that, really.
For David Coulthard and Red Bull Racing, tremendous cheer for them, coming off the back of a competitive performance in Bahrain 4 weeks ago. Rosberg is having another good drive in 6th place for Williams. Kovalainen is 7th for Renault, and Fisichella, his teammate, is 15 seconds behind him. So it's been a terrific day for Heikki Kovalainen relative to teammate Fisichella. Kovalainen on for his 2nd points finish of the season. Same story for Rosberg, who picked up a couple of points in Australia. So they've all made their 2nd stops. They're 3rd in Heikki Kovalainen's case. We've got 12 laps to go here to the finish in Barcelona.
Keep pushing. Fisichella in front. They need to stop again. Keep pushing.
That's for a World Championship point. We heard the engineer of Giancarlo Fisichella making that ever World Championship point. In front of the Honda team and in front of one of the works Renaults. We're looking at Robert Kubica. Quiet start to the season for him. Got 3 points for 6th place in the last Grand Prix in Bahrain, but he really has been shaded by teammate Heidfeld. This weekend he's been challenging for a podium, not quite got enough speed in the car, but nevertheless a terrific performance by him. This is more what we've come to expect from Robert Kubica after his very strong debut the second half of last season. There's Anthony Davidson in the 2nd of the Super Curies. He's in 11th place behind Rubens Barrichello, and a bit out of touch with Takuma Sato, half a minute behind Takuma Sato. As Coulthard runs a little wide there in turn 10. Barcelona. Fernando currently in second place here, 11 seconds behind race leader Felipe Massa. Those are the points positions at the moment, but Giancarlo Fisichella, we believe, has to stop again in the Renault, and that, if he does have to do that, he will drop behind Takuma Sato, who may be in a position to offer Super Aguri their first ever World Championship point, and at the end of the season that point could be extremely valuable. His strategy a bit compromised. He hasn't really recovered here. He tried to do something a bit different. Even that wasn't enough. Ferrari, the faster car here this weekend. We lost Kimi Raikkonen fairly early on to an electrical failure, and the other big story is that David Coulthard is having his best run since last summer. He's in 5th place for Red Bull Racing.
Yes, just 14 runners then. Heidfeld lost a wheel nut, then had a technical problem. Same for Ralf Schumacher with the technical. Liuzzi, car problem. Speed, a left rear blowout, probably after a puncture. Raikkonen, fuel pressure problems. Sorry, electrical problems, truly fuel pressure problems. Webber, technical in the drivetrain, I believe. And Wirtz tripped over the back of Ralf Schumacher on in the early stages of the Grand Prix. It's really Massa's pole position and then his stout defence of the line down into turn 1 is what made the difference for him. And meanwhile, Louise has found Nick Heidfeld.
Well, Nick, all sorts happening for you in that race, but tell us what it was that stopped you.
Gearbox problem in the end.
Tell us about the drama earlier on. You've probably had conversations with the team about the wheel not going on properly. What have they said to you?
Well, while driving I didn't really speak to them. I just told them that the front right wheel obviously was loose, and the lollipop gave me the sign, and then I stopped because I thought the wheel was loose, and nobody reacted for a long time, and after that the race was over.
Are you angry with them, or do you just think, well, that's one of the things that
isn't followed up by anybody, but they'll live and learn from that?
Well, it's a team that's pushing hard to make it to the front, and they are going to make some mistakes. Teammate Robert Kubica has challenged Alonso here for a podium. He's fallen short, and he's 7 seconds behind, but Kubica's still on target for his best run of the season so far, and there he is. They build them strong in Maranello.
After that stop, he had the mighty pace, fastest man out there, and suddenly he's going nowhere back there. And now he's got his teammate catching him quite quickly. We know from radio transmission that Fisichella's got to make another unscheduled stop, and just like Lewis Hamilton's front left wheel makes an unscheduled stop in the braking area down into the hairpin. It doesn't look too shabby at the moment though, that tyre.
A little flat spot emerging. You can see that the left wing mirror is missing of Lewis's car. That happened in the first stint before the first round of pit stop, so he's had no idea what's coming up behind him on the left, but so fast as he'd been going that very little has been coming up behind him. He's generally been leaving other things behind. This is the interesting situation for points with Sue. Quite sure why Renault have to make the extra stop. Possibly here is Fisichella. It's going to be very touch and go for the final World Championship point. Maybe not enough fuel went in at his final pit stop. That's the only logical conclusion I can think of, unless they short fueled him to leapfrog. The rig was broken apparently, so it was a bit of a mistake. Now, can he get out in front? Should be just about able to make it. It's going to be very tight though. Where's Sato?
Just coming out of the last turn.
Oh yeah, looks like he's got it. There is the McLaren, and there is Takuma Sato. Here we go then into turn 1. Who's going to go for it? Sato. He wants the point for Aguri. Fisichella's too far behind, and now Super Aguri are in a points-paying position. They'll be going mad for this in Japan.
Yeah, they've had fuel rig problems all afternoon in a Renault. It seems as if that's why they put Kovalainen onto the 3-stopper. And Ted has some news about McLaren's tyres.
Yeah, just caught a word with Jonathan Neal, who, Martin, as you know, is the MD of McLaren Racing. He was just confirming that it was that middle stint for Alonso. Completely unpredictable track conditions. I mean, when Alonso tried the hard tyre in practice, was so comfortable with it, and they planned the race around that, but couldn't react because he had a load of fuel and changing back onto the soft tyres. When the track changed, they went back to the soft tyres, and that's just what's destroyed their chance of a win down at McLaren.
Yeah, that makes sense, Ted, but also, I mean, Hamilton's is as fast on the hard tyres as Alonso ever has gone on the soft tyres, so Hamilton's just got more pace today.
Yep, he has had all weekend, there's no doubt about it. Hamilton has been faster than Fernando Alonso all weekend. Looking at David Coulthard there, and I think the way that Alonso has been described to me by people who've worked with him in the past. He's not a driver who takes well to not winning, as Adrian Newey there, top man on the engineering side at Red Bull, would be very pleased with the work here that has taken them to the front of that pack, really, the midfield pack, certainly clear of Williams and Renault this weekend. But how is Alonso going to react is the big question here. He has been once again shaded by his rookie teammate.
Coulthard's struggling, I think. He just did a lap time that's 6-7 seconds off the pace. I thought it sounded like he was struggling to get down the gearbox. 5 laps to go, and he's now only 9 seconds clear of the Rosberg-Kovalainen scrap, and is kind of okay in these first 2 sectors. So whether DC had a moment, traffic, or the beginning of a gearbox problem.
Apparently he's lost a gear in the gearbox, so he's having to work around that. Alonso's picking the pace up, but it's a little bit too late for him in 3rd place. It looks set then for Massa. Hamilton's got the gap down to under 10 seconds now. Alonso 3rd, Kubica 4th, Coulthard 5th, Rosberg 6th, Kovalainen 7th, and Takuma Sato for the Leafield-based Super Aguri team. And they'll be having a few pints down the pubs of Leafield tonight, I would think. What a tremendous result from this little team that didn't even exist at the end of the 2005 season. They started up last year.
Piece hanging off the front of Alonso's car there, presumably from that first corner trip across the gravel. It may well explain why he's not had that good a pace, except that he's just done with the sequential boxes. If he's got one missing, he'll just be crunching through that, and let's hope the bits go to the bottom of the box and stay there.
3 laps to go. Coulthard's margin over Rosberg just 5 seconds, and he is losing 1.7 seconds a lap to him at the moment. There is Rosberg pushing very hard to try and get the extra point off David.
It won't affect David at all. He can get on with those. It's just in the slower zones. And he'll have to be sort of adapting the driving. Maybe he can find a way not to have to pass through those gears, but lower down, just leave it in a higher gear. Depends which gear he's lost.
Dramatic moments in the closing stages of this Spanish Grand Prix then for David Coulthard. Meanwhile, another British driver at the front, Lewis Hamilton, is about to become the first driver since Coulthard to lead the World Championship. Coulthard led it after the first round of 2003. So we've gone 4 years since a British driver has led the World Championship. And Lewis Hamilton is on target to do just that. What an extraordinary story. 4 races into his first Grand Prix season. The other Brits, Anthony Davidson is 11th in the sister Super Aguri to Takuma Sato, ahead of Jenson Button in 12th place.
You see DC slipping back down to 7th as Rosberg and Kovalainen close in at 2 seconds per lap. He's absolutely helpless then if he's not got a full set of gears, and Rosberg ever closer. He was 2.5 seconds faster on the previous lap. Now the gap down 0.6 on this lap. DC might just be able to find himself a new rhythm, a new way to leave it in gear, leave it in a different gear.
Let's listen. Gear 3, I think. We didn't see it come up. Went straight to gear 4. 125.2 for Coulthard, 124.2 for Rosberg. He's less than 2 seconds behind with 2 laps to go. He's going to have to pass him, though. Not going to be easy after a race like Coulthard's had. See if he's using different gears. He's avoiding 3rd, I think. Took turn 1 in 4th gear.
Yeah, that information is very accurate that's up on the screen. It comes from the car data itself. DC using 18,900 revs on the shift, so they're using everything they've got from the engine to try to cover up whatever problem's going on with the gearbox. Lap 65, Massa's lead over Hamilton, now just 7.6 seconds. Alonso 11 seconds behind Hamilton in 3rd.
Massa has started his last lap, so David Coulthard has about 4 miles to make it without getting past, but a bit of a opposite lock there for Fernando Alonso. Coulthard has about 4 miles to do to try and retain that 5th place. There is Felipe Massa en route to his 4th career victory. And more importantly, second in a row after Bahrain. Look at the crowd. That's not what they came here for. Huge crowd here in Barcelona. Turned out to see Alonso win for the second year for Fernando Alonso last year. A magnificent performance by Massa, with Michael Schumacher in the wings, coming along as a consultant to the team. I'm sure a lot of people in Italy will be reaching for those headlines, and Germany, about the Schumi effect, but it certainly worked for Felipe Massa. He takes the third win of the season out of 4 for Ferrari. Felipe Massa wins in Spain, and here comes Lewis Hamilton. He is going to come through for his second place, his third in a row, and most important of all, he leads the Formula One World Championship after just 4 races of his career. And I think Alonso is going to come through in third place.
Alonso does indeed. Lewis Hamilton, the first man in the history of Grand Prix racing to get 4 consecutive poles in his first podiums in his first 4 Grand Prix. Away somehow to avoid that gear, and he's comfortably ahead of him as they move. They've got 2 corners and an acceleration zone to go. Coulthard should be okay.
Edgy stuff for David Coulthard. Rosberg ran out of laps to catch him. Coulthard comes through for his best result since last summer for the Red Bull Racing team. Great for everybody at Milton Keynes. A huge effort by all of them to get to this point. And there is Alonso. I wonder how his mood will be like at the end of this Grand Prix. Once again shaded by teammate Hamilton. No doubt about the winner, though.
And you, Sunshine, well done, well done. Pole position, fastest lap, and the race win. Job done, job done. Stick that. Have that, well done, Sunshine.
He sounds like the lead singer of the Arctic Monkeys, doesn't he? It's Rob Smedley, the race engineer of Felipe Massa, and boy, he's making a name for himself in Formula One.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of rubber down the side of Massa's Ferrari where he collected Alonso into that first corner, so he really did take quite a side impact. As you said, that car's had a pretty eventful afternoon with the fire as well. Hamilton ended up just 6.7 seconds adrift, but about 10 laps ago we were on board with Felipe Massa, and he was changing gear 18.4, 18.5. They backed out of that a long time ago. They knew they had the race well covered.
There is the classification, and once again it's theoretically the number 2 drivers in the team, so certainly the lower paid of the drivers, if you like, in the teams, and that is generally the barometer in Formula One. Massa and Hamilton, who outshine the main runners, and Alonso down to 3rd, and Raikkonen not finishing here this afternoon. Well, Hamilton takes a slice of the championship lead. What about the driver of the day today? Because Martin, we've seen some fantastic performances. Obviously David Coulthard deserves a lot of credit for what he's done. Rosberg tried hard. Hamilton's the championship leader. Who's your driver of the day?
I think it's the same 2 really that were up for it in Bahrain, Felipe Massa and David Coulthard. I think Coulthard's done a brilliant job today and deserves, from my point of view, driver of the day. I'm questioning. It's only 5th place, but I think he managed to kept a cool head on him, drove around some problems, had tremendous pace when he needed it, and some good fights. But this man did a supreme job as well.
It's becoming a habit for Felipe Massa. This is his 4th win, and those who watched Formula One racing a few years ago when he made his debut with the Sauber team would be very surprised. And there's Michael Schumacher embracing Michelle Yeoh, who's the wife of Jean Todt.
I wonder if they'll let Michael go up on the podium as the Ferrari representative, do you think?
I really hope not. Not that I've got anything against Michael Schumacher, but I think that sends out all the wrong signals about Ferrari and where they're going. Although he is a consultant, and I hear he is going to come to a few more races. Here's your race winner.
He's such a lovely little man as well. He's just a really nice, easygoing guy.
And you know, the thing was that big part of the success of the Ferrari team was the relationship between Michael Schumacher and Jean Todt over the years. There's Aldo Costa, the designer of the Ferrari. And And it looks as though Massa has a similar relationship to Jean Todt. Absolutely pivotal to the whole situation there. Kimi Räikkönen has walked into the Ferrari team expecting to be top dog, and he is not the top dog. And here is your new World Championship leader, Lewis Hamilton. What an extraordinary story. Thanks the car, thanks the crowd.
Pretty uneventful day for Lewis, hasn't it, really? Haven't seen too much of him in many respects. Just almost like a very solid practice run in testing. He just went out, delivered pretty much perfect lap after perfect lap, and rewarded with second place. McLaren did not have an answer for the pace of the Ferraris.
Lewis's brother Nicholas there, just making his way to underneath the podium. Another enormous crowd, many of them coming from Asturias in the northwest corner of Spain. They've travelled down, it's about 1,000 kilometres across from there, and a huge army of them have come across to support as they did last year. Massa once again delighted. Lewis Hamilton though leading the championship by 2 points now, but this guy's definitely in it. Something of a lack of dialogue between Hamilton and Alonso. He's really put him under pressure. It's an interesting situation that's going to evolve.
Lewis Hamilton leading the World Championship. Albin Costa, the chief designer from Scooter.
I'd like to know what Massa and Alonso said after that first corner tussle, if anything at all. Fernando doesn't look in talking mood, as you say.
Talking to people that have worked with him, he just really psychologically doesn't like it when people beat him. I mean, that's a normal, natural thing to say about racing drivers, but he in particular, apparently more than Schumacher, who, if he got beaten, would go away and forensically examine why he'd lost. Alonso just gets a huge face on and really doesn't like it. He hates it, in fact. There's Todd.
That pack they're taking off, Massa's trying to get rid of there. They monitor his pulse and some other functions while he's in the car, back on the pit wall, and that same telemetry system. Oops, he's going to end up celebrating his victory with a bit of an umbilical cord there.
And here they are, Felipe Massa, Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso.
victory for Felipe Massa. He's just a point behind Alonso in the World Championship now, and just 3 points behind Lewis Hamilton. We're going to have a race here in Barcelona for the foreseeable future. That contract renewed well into the next decade, and a race is starting in Valencia as well, all because of the man on the right, Fernando Alonso. Who knows, if Lewis carries on like this, we might end up with 2 races in Britain.
We might end up with a very, very closely fought World Championship this year, that's for sure. And Massa suddenly becomes a full contender for the world title if he keeps driving like that.
Aldo Costa, chief designer at Ferrari, part of the new technical team that's taken up the helm after the departure of Ross Brawn and Rory Byrne. They certainly seem to be carrying on the tradition. They've got to keep it going because McLaren's development has been pretty impressive since the start of the season, and that's what's kept Lewis Hamilton in this position. Another one for the trophy cabinet. He's already got 4. This is only his first year. Anthony Hamilton, his father, Nicholas there, his brother, absolutely loving this. Sporting congratulation for Alonso for his 3rd place. It's not what they came for. And as the winners gather up on the top of the podium, well, Raikkonen took an early bath, Alonso failed to shine, Massa won the race, but Lewis Hamilton leads the World Championship in his debut season. We travel next to Monaco, where Lewis has never lost a race. The dream gets ever more unreal for Lewis Hamilton.
Great race. You're leading the World Championship. Pretty good achievement.
Woohoo! That's good. Let's just keep this continuous.